on climate is we need, it's the right step in the right direction to go. We need to act on climate, and we need to have more environmental justice voices involved in the process. And this is why we very much welcome the creation of the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. We are also delighted that the number of seats allocated to the environmental justice voices in this council has been increased to 11. As we all know, the process is as important as the policy. As your agency is currently seeking nominations for this council, we thought it would be a good idea to have a public forum on this exciting or existing council. We want to focus this forum on the opportunity to discussions. So Commissioner Dykes is going to give us a short presentation. I may ask a follow-up, a few follow-up questions, and then the floor will be open to everybody. Note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and is also streamed on our Facebook page. So Commissioner Dykes, what is the Connecticut and Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council?
Great. Well, thank you so much for that introduction and for convening this meeting today. I'm so glad to be a part of it. And I'm just thrilled about all of the interest and enthusiasm about this executive order that Governor Lamont signed last December. As we know, we are facing a climate crisis in our state and across our planet. And we know that environmental justice communities are frontline communities and are experiencing the impacts of climate change first and worst. And these climate change impacts are coming on top of decades-long burdens that communities have been feeling because of other environmental justice challenges, including the disproportionate impacts that many communities are experiencing as a result of high levels of air pollution and siting and hosting a lot of infrastructure that is emitting pollution in our state. So we have an environmental justice program at our department. We have made it a commitment over the last 3 years. I've made it a priority as Commissioner of DEEP to ensure that we're incorporating equity and environmental justice across our programs and our approaches. But in addition, I was so proud and that Governor Lamont has made this a significant priority in the executive order that he signed last December to ensure that we can better institutionalize our approach to environmental justice and equity within the Department of Environmental Protection by creating this Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So my goal is to be able to provide some more information for everyone today, if we go to the next slide, about what the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council will do, what topics, and by the way, we've been referring to it as the CEEJAC. We love, as good bureaucrats, we love our acronyms. So we're going to be, that I'll be referring to it as the CEEJAC. But as we're kind of getting this launched, we've been thinking about some of these questions of what will the CEEJAC do, what topics the CEEJAC should focus on, how we organize the CEEJAC. So how will CEEJAC members be selected? And then how will the meetings be organized? When will the CEEJAC meet? And so on and so forth. So we have, so I've introduced those questions because part of our effort, to this group here, because part of our effort with the CEEJAC is to make sure that we're having this dialogue and being transparent about the kinds of questions we're thinking about and organizing the CEEJAC, and also getting the benefit of input and dialogue from communities, from the public, about how we should be thinking about these questions. I know we've got some slides here. I'm just going to keep narrating through them, and I know we're having a bit of technical difficulties with them, but hopefully you can see the questions here. And I'm going to move to the first one about what will the CEEJAC do. So the purpose and the mission of the CEEJAC is up, you can see up here on the slide. This is straight from the executive order, which says a lot more than just a sentence, but I think that this gives a good sense of what we've been directed by the executive order to focus on. This is, but I'll just again to share how we've been thinking about it here at DEEP. We see a number of ways that the CEEJAC can function and things that it can focus on fundamentally. One is to enable us to DEEP to better share information with CEEJAC members about what we're doing at DEEP. So we can alert folks to, as you think about it, how we're proposing to launch new programs, or when we're issuing requests for proposals for new grant programs, such as our urban forestry grant program we launched last year to help improve tree cover in our urban communities, or when we're implementing the bipartisan infrastructure law that's going to be bringing billions of dollars investments to our state. Are we thinking about, we can share information about how we're approaching some of those federal program opportunities, and to ensure that we're applying an equity environmental justice lens and getting input from CEEJAC members to make sure that our intentions in terms of how we do that are going to be impactful and aligned with what equity and environmental justice advocates and with community members with what their priorities and needs are. So one basic role of the CEEJAC in our view would be to give us a channel to share this information. I just want to note, of course, that the CEEJAC process is something that would be open to the public, to the extent that we would have members identified to be on the council, on the CEEJAC, but all of our meetings would be open to the public. And so we would view this as not just a chance to inform CEEJAC members, but any members of the public that are interested in following along and being part of these meetings, including through public comments at the end of meetings, or submitting comments. But this is I just wanted to highlight that. The other thing that the CEEJAC can be to provide a channel, not an exclusive channel, but an additional channel for CEEJAC members to raise priorities and issues affecting environmental justice communities to DEEP's attention. And so I see this as very much a two-way communication and two-way process for DEEP to share what we're doing and get input, and also for communities to let us know what concerns and priorities issues they're having. And I know that will strengthen our approach to equity and environmental justice across our programs, to have that opportunity for that input. And then a third thing that the CEEJAC can do, we'll be able to advise DEEP on how we can better engage communities on these issues. And so this is as much about the substance of what we're doing as it is about the process of how we are engaging, communicating with communities, listening to communities about their needs and their concerns. I'm very proud through this pandemic that many of our different programs and offices within DEEP have been utilizing new types of ways to engage with communities, whether it's evening Zoom meetings, informational sessions, providing for new ways of engaging communities. I would like to, as the commissioner, to have input from the CEEJAC members to make sure that the practices we're using, including translation, the time of day for meetings, how we're accommodating in-person versus virtual meetings, that they are that we are refining and fine-tuning and utilizing the best practices we can in how we engage with communities on the work that we do at DEEP. So this is sort of just putting out to folks on the call today how we've been thinking about what the CEEJAC will do. And this is very much something that we're looking forward to refining this scope as we start the CEEJAC process and hear from CEEJAC members, as well as for members of the public that get involved with the CEEJAC process. A next big question for us all is, what topics should the CEEJAC focus on? And so to that end, this is what you see on this slide is a list of possibilities based on some of the brainstorming that we've done internally here at DEEP. So I'm eager to hear folks' reactions to these potential topics. We know, I think At DEEP, we have, I would venture to say, some of the broadest range of different programs that we are, of any agency that we're responsible for. A hugely diverse set of programs and services that we provide for the public. So associated with that, we want to make sure that the CEEJAC can, provide for a venue for us to get into the level of detail and engagement that CEEJAC members have on some of the different topical areas that DEEP works in. So just to give you a flavor of some of these topics, we could have a focus on air pollution. For example, DEEP is excited under the executive order to be launching an air quality community monitoring program. We have responsibility for permitting and enforcement for various regulated entities, including stationary sources that are emitting air pollution. That is a very important topic for us to be engaging with affected communities about. Transportation emissions are another huge contributor to air pollution. And we know how important it is to engage communities on the various solutions that can be advanced to ensure that communities overburdened by air pollution can benefit equitably from the various solutions that are advanced to help reduce air emissions. Water is another key area for us. Drinking water, surface water quality are key areas of focus for DEEP. And we, as well as for many communities, we know about the impacts that many communities are experiencing in terms of with environmental justice communities hosting a disproportionate share of infrastructure in our state, the impacts that they can be burdened with in terms of sewage spills and impacts, flooding associated with climate change as another major concern. So these are just a few of the concepts or ideas, topics that we've brainstormed related to water that the CEEJAC could focus on. Another relates to land as an organizing kind of category. So when you think about brownfields revitalization and projects and new infrastructure that gets cited on brownfields, and whether that's compatible with the needs of environmental justice communities, thinking about equitable access to urban, to parks and forestry, when we think about the very low levels of tree cover that many of our communities live with. Impacts with respect to infrastructure and other land use considerations could come under that category of lands that folks could focus on. I've got another category here. I think energy is one that we are very interested in engaging with CEEJAC members on when you think about affordability, equitable access to workforce development opportunities and participation in programs that can reduce emissions as well as save people money on their energy bills. These are some of the topics that could be covered in an energy focused kind of category of engagement. And then I just wanted to say, as we think about all these different topics that we can dive into, I'm also reflective of what we're asking CEEJAC members to do in terms of contributing their time to be part of the council. And we've heard some early feedback that we need to be really sensitive to the bandwidth that members will have and the frequency of meetings, and how to ensure that members can be adequately prepared to discuss the topics that are brought up. So one concept that we've been thinking about that I wanted to share for some feedback is establishing working groups or subcommittees within the advisory council that could dive into these particular topics of interest. If folks are anyone who's familiar with the Governor's Council on Climate Change process that we've been supporting proudly over the last several years, the Governor's Council has, I think, had a lot of success in being able to engage many stakeholders and community leaders on topics of interest because we've adopted a kind of a subcommittee structure with the Governor's Council. So the Governor's Council has within it 7 different working groups, and each working group, in some cases, some of them have additional subcommittees, and that's enabled us to organize meetings based on topics of interest that can be a more efficient way for people who have interest in specific topics to get engaged. The other benefit of establishing subcommittees or working groups in the GC3 model that I think could be applied here is that it enables us to bring in and involve additional people as members of subcommittees, even if they're not on the, they may not be members of the advisory council itself, but we have allowed for additional people who are not members of the CEEJAC members of the Governor's Council on Climate Change to be members of Governor's Council on Climate Change working groups. And so through that, it's enabled us through the GC3 process to have a Governor's Council of about 24 people, but 7 different working groups that are supported by more than 230 people who've been members of each of these different working groups. And so that could enable us to make participation if we adopted that similar structure for the CEEJAC, it could enable us to make it more feasible for people to get involved in the particular topic that they're interested in and have a really substantive and effective dialogue and impact on these particular topical categories without overwhelming the CEEJAC itself, members to cover each and every one of these categories. But then each of those subcommittees or working groups could report up their insights to the full CEEJAC for adoption of recommendations or for and so on and so forth. So those are some of the thoughts that we've been having that I've just wanted to introduce to everyone on the call today, because we're always eager to hear whether it's in the chat here or sending an email to us at DEEP, and we'll have the address later to tell us what you think about this approach. Community, in addition to these kind of topical subcommittees, I think other things that the CEEJAC I think it would be great for the CEEJAC to focus on. One is community engagement best practices. As I mentioned on the previous slide, I'm very committed to ensuring that all of our programs, all of our staff across DEEP, that we're utilizing best practices and how we're engaging with communities and communicating what we're doing with communities, listening to communities, so that we can be as accessible as possible. And then very importantly, strengthening Connecticut's environmental justice law is another really important topic. We know that we could really benefit in our state from enhancements to our environmental justice law to modernize it. And I think that this is a very important topic for us to hear from communities on and from members of the CEEJAC to help inform proposals that we could recommend to the legislature for ways to strengthen the environmental justice law and make it more effective. All right, that was a lot. I'll try to speed up a bit because I know I'm eager for the dialogue. So if we want to go to the next slide, the next question is who will serve on the CEEJAC? So this is the language that's directly from the statute that reflects who, I'm sorry, not from the statute, from the executive order that directs the minimum participation that is required by the executive order for the CEEJAC. So the number of appointments to the CEEJAC is not limited to the minimum numbers that are defined in the executive order. As you'll see from the next slide, the executive order provides for the Commissioner of DEEP to identify additional members for the CEEJAC that are as needed to accomplish the goals of the CEEJAC. So the goal that I have is to find a balance of representation from across the state and to ensure that environmental justice communities are well represented on the CEEJAC. I know that I think many people have pointed out that that there's a critical need to ensure that there's parity, that environmental justice advocates and community representatives have a prominent and a very significant role in terms of the balance of membership on the CEEJAC. And so, I think that that's really important. It's important for us to prioritize the selection and participation of members who have come from community, who live in environmental justice communities, and have direct connection to those communities in their experience, including when we're thinking about the individuals who would serve in the roles that are not specified in the executive order as environmental justice representatives. And so that's something that I'm going to be looking for and hoping we can recruit potential members who have those experiences, who are coming from those communities. And when we're thinking about representatives of business and industry and representatives from municipalities or regional councils, as well as when we're thinking about the representatives that are spelled out in the executive order as environmental justice community representatives. So we're really excited about this. The first step, of course, in terms of defining the membership is to recruit terrific people to be willing to serve on the CEEJAC. And so from that standpoint, we have issued a kind of request to the public. We're seeking people who will apply and who have knowledge and interest in the various areas listed on this slide to be members of the CEEJAC. And in addition, we're really eager to hear from people. If you, in addition to whether you may be interested in applying to be on the CEEJAC, you may know someone who you think would be just fantastic to serve on the CEEJAC. And so we're asking for nominations as well. The time frame for when we're hoping to get those responses is coming up next week. We'll pop into the chat here the link to our website where we're asking people to respond. We try to, keep this. This is just, we're not intending for this to be a really burdensome kind of application process, but really just a chance for us to have an open process to hear from folks who may be interested or get nominations and leads on folks that people think would be terrific to take this on. So that's, I think, one of my the most time sensitive things that I'm looking for feedback and input on today is to, just encourage people to put your name forward and let us know if you may have interest and about your background and experiences that would contribute to the CEEJAC. In addition, as we build out the membership of the CEEJAC in time for our first meetings coming up in March, we also will hopefully at that first meeting be able to settle on if the subcommittee idea or working group idea and what and if I don't know if we'll launch every working group right off the bat, but maybe start with one or two to gain experience and see how that works. And there may be people who apply to be on the CEEJAC. If they are not selected to be a member of the CEEJAC, they may be someone who would be a great candidate to be a member of one of the working groups. So I really do hope we can build out a great list to get us started of people who may have interest. I recognize that this is just a commitment of time but hopefully to a positive end. If you go to the next slide, these are some of the criteria that we are going to be applying to, as we think about who would be great applicants and nominees for this, for participating in the CEEJAC. So I just put this up here. If you feel like you have these skills and abilities or know someone who does, this is our sort of wish list of what we're looking for when we think about, terrific people who could serve on the CEEJAC or on subcommittees or working groups if and when those are established. So then I want to go to the last slide here, which is about our schedule. We've had some good initial feedback in terms of when and how the CEEJAC should meet. It's our intention to do our meetings of the CEEJAC in that early evening time slot. I realized as we are hoping to make this process accessible to the broadest range of people possible, we felt that shifting to that early evening meeting time might give us the best chance of being able to accommodate a broader, the broader public and other CEEJAC potential members schedules to be able to get involved. So that is our intention there. We've also been trying to think through how to launch this and have it be a really effective council, but also be respectful of the time commitments that members can give to the CEEJAC and that members of the public can give to participating in CEEJAC meetings. So from that standpoint, we initially were thinking about having the full CEEJAC meet 4 times a year, and then have subcommittees and working groups meet in the months intervening. And so this would mean that there's activity going on these subtopics in these working groups throughout the year, and then reporting up to the full CEEJAC on this quarterly basis. These are tentative dates that I hope people will jot down that we're holding ideally for these CEEJAC meetings. Of course, this will be subject to once we get members identified and can confirm that we would have that these dates would work with our members. But we wanted to try to hold times on the calendar again so that we can launch this effectively and give people as much time to plan for availability as possible. So those are some of the things that we've been thinking about to date, but I just put this out there to hopefully generate some feedback and response and suggestions from all of you on the call. This is very important to me as the commissioner to launch this in an effective way. And based on the feedback that we've heard, I think this, I'm pleased that it feels that this is also very important to many people across the state of Connecticut, including those of you on the call. So in that spirit, I am open and eager to hear feedback and input that people have based on what we've presented so far, so we can get this launched in the right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Dykes. I'm passing the torch to Thomas, who's our Transfer Harper coordinator, and he will be the moderator from this point on. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you again. Thank you, Commissioner, very much for this presentation, and we really appreciate again you being here and talking about CEEJAC. I just have a first question before we open the floor and I want to put a good shout out to all the legislators who are here with us today. And actually, can we nominate legislators? Would you welcome the nominations?
That's a great question. So I should say I've been really excited about the response that we've gotten from several legislators about serving on the CEEJAC. And this would be a great one to hear some feedback on. You know, as an executive branch agency, we are responsive to legislators. They have, in terms of their oversight responsibilities, and you know, we are implementing the laws that the legislature passes. So in that sense, it's a you know, it's a little interesting to think about how that responsive relationship that we have to legislators changes if a legislator is serving in an advisory role to the commissioner on the CEEJAC. In addition to that, I think we've also heard from some members of environmental justice communities that legislators have kind of a role and a venue or a avenue to make change and have their voices heard on these issues. And we are so lucky and fortunate in Connecticut to have many legislators that are very passionate and effective advocates on spotlighting equity and environmental justice issues in the legislature. But that the sense is that having legislators on the advisory council might take the space away from a community member who does not have that similar kind of venue and access and ability to express their voices. And so it may have that, you know, kind of unintended consequence of making it harder for others who don't have that similar venue to have their voices heard. And so I'm sensitive to that latter. this is in the spirit of the dialogue and discussion. I just want to, I think that's a great question for you to raise. So within that, I think we've been leaning towards, thinking that maybe there's another way for us to engage legislators who are interested in and advocates on equity and environmental justice, perhaps co-convening meetings of the CEEJAC with legislators who have a role and have interest in these issues, or thinking of other ways to bring the work and the voices of CEEJAC members and through these meetings to integrate with the work that legislators are doing. But I'd love to hear any feedback or thoughts people have on that.
Thank you. Jess, you next.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, Katie. Thank you so much. Hi, Commissioner Dykes. Thank you so much for
Katie's fine. Great to see you.
Good to see you. So I had a couple of thoughts. I think so. I work with chambers of commerce, mainly in Massachusetts and Connecticut, but I have been doing a lot more national work lately and looking into diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am working on a project right now in Ohio, and litter pickup for their community is really important. Also recycling. So I wanted to make sure that component is included. The other thing that I didn't see on the form was commercial energy efficiency, which I think is really important, as well as the workforce development. And I heard you mention that, but we hear that a lot from chambers, that having workforce development programs to get people into this field is really critical. And I think especially in those low income environmental justice communities, oftentimes we see commercial or residential energy efficiency for low income individuals, but not a path to help them engage in this work and give them a future. The other things that I wanted to mention, I agree with you that I think we should lean towards having advocates and community members on the CEEJAC rather than having legislators, because I think they do currently already have a forum. And my final question is, for these meetings, do you think that do you anticipate them being virtual? I would recommend that we do include that option so that it is more accessible for people and more equitable.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I'll just note, we have several members of our team who are on our DEEP team who are on the Zoom today. And so we're taking copious notes. So thank you for all those suggestions, which I think are great. I think we have been leaning towards doing these virtually. Obviously, the COVID situation is fast changing, but I think our goal is really to look at virtual versus in-person just on its own, separate, or perhaps to just start there and understand which is more accessible, and which kind of approach is best increases the ability for people to participate with as little burden as possible. So it'll be great to hear more feedback about that. But I think initially our sense was to have the first meeting be virtual, and this is absolutely part of that. Developing best practices for engagement, right, would be to help us better understand, as we move into this, I hate to say it, new normal, how virtual forums, how to make them, whether they should continue, and the extent to which there are equity challenges for participation, or how those could be overcome. So that's a really great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Michel, you next, and I really like your background. I see the SDG behind. Very nice.
Yeah, I've been thank you, Thomas. I was always hoping that maybe we could develop our own for Connecticut and our goals, right? So thank you, Commissioner Dykes. Really appreciate the conversation. Nice to see you. I was just curious for the members of the CEEJAC, is it possible to get the slide back up on the description of the membership? And yes, I did actually apply for the CEEJAC, but not in the spirit of trying to take away a spot for a member of the public, especially from an EJ community. But I think that the number of representatives from the EJ communities, I believe, is too low. But that's why I was wondering if we could see the slide again, or the description.
Yep. I'll see if I think Andrew is posting slide. Andrew Hoskins, our chief of staff. And yes, so the number that's in the slide and from the executive order is 3. members from EJ communities, but again, highlighting that the executive order makes it possible for DEEP to the DEEP commissioner select more than 3. And so in my view, I think that, we've heard a lot of feedback about, the importance of that. And so that's great. And very welcome thinking about increasing that from 3. I think in addition to that, I'll note that as we think about the positions, the 3 representatives of environmental advocacy organizations, the business representatives, the municipal representatives, that those also can be people who serve who fit those descriptions, but also we would hope to be able to find people in those roles who are living in EJ communities or people of color, people who have that experience, because we know that there are many people who fit, who have those experiences as well, who would fit into these representative roles. So I say this is a yes and, right? Yes, more than 3, and finding people in these other business, municipal, et cetera, roles who also have direct experience on environmental justice. And then in addition to that, we have the ability to, as we think about the working groups, right? That will be a chance to bring in even more people to be involved. So I would expect the numbers and the opportunities for engagement, which will be very meaningful in these working groups, right? Will again be a multiplier effect for participation of people who are who would fit that first category of the equity and environmental justice advocates.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with the, for example, as a representative, the idea is not to take away a spot from the member from the public, but maybe to offer the help of my office or my help in a working group, more like this idea, not the CEEJAC itself, but at least if there would be some open idea of participation. We do have a platform, but that platform is also has also its limits. And one legislator may want one thing, but there's another 150 legislators and another 36 senators. So, coming in a point of view that I've been really fighting hard for, against some issues on my side in Stamford, in the South End, and other places in the state. But thank you for the discussion.
And can I respond back with something that's not directly to that, but like another idea that has come up? Someone made a comment in another dialogue that we were having like this a couple of weeks ago, that if you're living in an environmental justice community, right, you're not experiencing or your issues aren't like siloed the way that our programs are at DEEP, so that you just have an air pollution issue and then you might, or you have a brownfield issue, or you have a, urban forestry issue, but that if you're living in these communities, all of these things are affecting you, right? And uniquely to your community, right? Hartford, not the same as, the South, or like, right, right. So one thought that I had is, and again, I'm trying to be very sensitive to not like overburden and overtax the time that our CEEJAC members will have to give to this initiative, but that we might think about, in addition to having quarterly CEEJAC meetings and the meetings of the subcommittees that are happening along, to organize maybe a once-a-year meeting in, a number of environmental justice communities around the state, to do a community meeting where CEEJAC members, and members of the subcommittees could develop an agenda that touches on the topics that various topics the subcommittees are working on and what have you, that are relevant to that particular neighborhood or that particular community. So it can kind of bring all of this together, right? And make in a way that is reflective of what the experience is like for, what the more comprehensive interests and needs are for someone living in a particular community, if that makes sense. And that might be a great kind of more place-based, those kind of place-based meetings might be a great way for us to involve local representatives and elected officials, do you know what I mean? Who are leading on these issues. So anyway, that was just like a thought. And since we're like, this is a great I'm just taking advantage of this venue, you
Yeah.
know, where we were hoping
Well-
to have this kind of back and forth to like shop this additional idea.
The CEEJAC is going to have a town hall in several districts. It's yeah, of course. For example, if they come in they do one for Stamford, then I'll make sure that the community leaders from the South End, the West Side, from the affected communities are getting the information so that they come and participate. And that will bring, because also when we look at the environmental justice map, there are things that are not considered still yet on the map. So there's definitely some gaps to fill. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to flag a question that I received through direct message through the chat. And the question is, does the executive order include any requirements for geographic representation across the state? Have any leaders from civil rights, immigrant rights groups have been nominated or applied for the CEEJAC?
So it doesn't include or subject to check. I don't believe it includes a requirement about geographic diversity, but it is something that we are looking for. And in with the application nomination form, we've asked for information around, you know, the where people live or their community that they are associated with. So hopefully we can ensure that geographic. There's a lot of different things we're trying to solve for with like the participation, but that is definitely an important one.
Thank you. Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this, Transport Hartford and DEEP. Appreciate it. I think it's very needed regarding the fact that, you know, this was exciting to see in the executive order, and then it became a little problematic in that we were kind of confused as to, and still, frankly, I'm not sure I am not clear, I guess the word is, as to how this body will influence policy to some degree to which it needs to. And is there a plan to potentially make this some kind of filter for how we do policy in the future, possibly, you know, using it as the lens from which we look through in order to make good policy. We are looking at environmental justice bill this session that's going to be coming up. I think it does need to be strong and do some good things. And I think where that piece meets this piece is sort of the way I'm thinking about it down the road. Also, I think that it's a good blueprint for what needs to happen in other departments. And so I'm thinking, can this CEEJAC be something that looks not just from the DEEP standpoint, right, but from the transportation standpoint, for example, because we know if you're going to look at the ways that we're all being most affected by air pollution, it's transportation and greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. So I guess it's a larger question, but it's something I want to put a pin in so that we're looking down the road at this not being a just a body that is, you know, important to have, but where's the influence that it can bring to the process as we go forward in our state when it comes to these issues. So it's not really a question, it's more of a comment.
Great. Well, I appreciate that comment. I think we're, I think this is, you know, we're trying to, as we get this started, I think I take from your comment that you see a lot of potential in what this is and what it can be. And so eager to hear more, you know, in terms of more as those ideas are fleshed out, you know, what that can look like. But I think the question that I'm hearing you ask is, how does this advisory council actually influence what DEEP does? And I think that's, you know, I think that's kind of one of those questions that has to stay like an active question throughout the CEEJAC process, you know, as we have discussions and dialogue about, you know, seeking input on things, then what does that translate to in terms of impact or decision making, right? So it's hard to, as you said, it's a comment. It's hard to answer that now, but I think it's our intention, and I very much anticipate, that will be a kind of an active question for us throughout as we get this started, to see how these issues and how the concerns that and opportunities that get raised through the CEEJAC will be embedded and implemented into different programs. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, so hi, Commissioner. It's glad to see you and appreciate your taking this time out. I'm also very thrilled to see so many people from so many different organizations on this call. One of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is the lack of leadership of color, of people of color organizations in Connecticut that are environmental justice based. From my perspective, there should be between 10 and 20 environmental justice organizations in the state focused on various things like housing and environmental justice, like sea level rise and environmental justice, like transportation and environmental justice. So, one of my hopes is that, that a number of that we work with the legislature through this environmental justice law and other bills to provide the funding, both the internal funding within DEEP to support environmental justice, maybe 2 or 3 additional positions per year. And then, I think that there needs to be a base of about $2 million for basic environmental justice organizational support so that we can build the leadership of color. So I'm glad to hear in the chat that there's a Green Latinos group in Connecticut. I didn't know that. But I think that because of the limited number of people of color that are involved in environmental justice, that, as you said, we're going to need to go slow because we don't have the capacity to meet the needs to provide the input that's required. So I'm hoping, that that the legislature can help with that, and the DEEP can help with that. But on the other hand, it's very clear to me that 3 environmental justice members is not enough on the CEEJAC. We had been talking about having 11. I had heard from Edith that you had agreed to that number. So if you could just clarify whether that is the number.
yeah.
Then my second question is about the time frame for the decision making for the membership on CEEJAC.
So I think transparency and trust and speaking clearly is very important to being effective with this. I do want to say, I think that the number 11 is not something I had talked with Edith about. So I just want to, I just want to be clear that there may have been a bit of a telephone game in terms of the number of 11. It could be more than 11. It could be, fewer than 11. We have the working groups that we're talking about. So I'm not sure where the number 11 came from, but I just wanted to say that we're eager to see, I am on the same page with folks in wanting to have much more than 3
Right.
people on this advisory council. Currently, we have just a handful of applications that we've received. So I think we're eager to see what responses we get back. If there's something significant to the number 11, it would be helpful for me to hear, what that is. But I don't know that there's a specified number that we've kind of settled on. But most importantly is about trying to encourage lots of people to express interest to get involved. And so we had the deadline set for next week for the 25th, I believe, for people to submit an application. Obviously, depending on if we don't get enough, responses, we'll look to extend. that deadline. But the sooner we get applications and responses, the sooner we can identify people and let them know, because we want to have the first meeting at the end of March, and we want to let people know as far in advance as we can, so that we can make sure that members can be prepared and ready to participate, in that first meeting. So we're very much oriented towards, being able to have a robust response for the applications by the 25th, so that we could begin to identify people to be on the CEEJAC, in the first week or so of March. But if we don't get a robust response, we may have to move that date out, and that could affect when we can notify people. I will also say February 25th does not necessarily mean like the door closes forever, because we have the ability to add more people over time. So we could start off with a number of people on the CEEJAC, and continue to add folks as we get going, and as more people become aware of the CEEJAC, and we identify that we want to that there could be others who would be great to be on the CEEJAC, and we could add them over time. So that's another possibility, which is where I think the number of 11 I think is a good intention to shoot for, but like I want to not chisel that into rock because of some of these other kind of startup kind of factors that I'm just highlighting here in terms of getting nominations, notifying people in time for a meeting, at the end of March. So it could grow over time is another possibility.
Yeah,
And I also think that the other big question is, are we setting up these working groups, and what will they focus on? And I think that would be a great major topic for the CEEJAC to talk about at the end of March. And so as we determine, and again, how many and what the focus should be for the first subcommittees, that will also create the opportunities for more participation that will grow as well, right? So anyway, those are just, I just want to be transparent about that. I don't want to have people, I don't want to create an expectation around 11 that isn't aligned with like some of these startup factors that we're trying to work towards.
Yeah. The number 11 came from the count that the number of non-EJ folks on the CEEJAC would be 11. And so there was an interest in having a majority EJ people on CEEJAC. I think that's where that number came from. There were a number of environmental justice led or people of color led organizations that thought that would be the case. But I hear you in saying that not all of the positions have to be filled at our first meeting.
But I think that's helpful. I hadn't heard that context, so that's this is very valuable for me to hear. I hadn't been aware of what was behind the 11 number. So great, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm that we were told numerous times by this person that the number has been changed to 11.
Yeah, I heard it too.
And
okay.
And in my last conversation with Elise, she told me that by email that she has received a very high level of number of applications for the CEEJAC, and we are mobilizing. It's why we're having also this forum, is to encourage nominations, and we are going to send some very strong nominations to Elise as well.
We have 9 applications currently. So
really,
yes. So I want to encourage. That's like, I think the number one thing is if you care about this enough that you're on this call, take 5 minutes at the conclusion of this to think about applying or about encouraging someone to apply.
and one of them is David Michel.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Is there more questions for some? Anyone to raise a hand? I see some questions from Jean in the chat about solar. Commissioner, if you want to look at the chat for a second. The question is, how about including access to clean solar power from local community solar farms for low-income communities? You go to 12:40 in the chat.
Definitely a really important topic for, that I think the CEEJAC or a subcommittee on energy or on land use could it would be great to dig into. This is one. This is actually perfectly illustrating one of the things that, for me as commissioner, would be really valuable to have the CEEJAC for, which is we have programs such as the shared solar program that is, one of the primary drivers of that program is to provide access to solar power for people, especially people who don't have a single family home or have access to credit such that they could take part in the state's net metering programs. And so shared solar provides for the opportunity for renters and people living in multifamily units and so on to subscribe to and get the benefits, the same kinds of benefits that a net metering customer would get from developing solar. But one of the questions that's come up is whether it would be a positive for those solar farms to actually be located, physically built in environmental justice communities, such as on brownfields, and whether an environmental justice community would have a preference to welcome that kind of development on a brownfield in their community or not. But people, without having, if we don't, or in the absence of more channels like the CEEJAC to, hear from the community leaders and environmental justice advocates about their views on those kinds of topics, we are in danger sometimes as regulators or policymakers of substituting, our judgments on those topics, which are really more about, should be informed by directly by communities themselves. It's a separate issue about the siting of the solar versus the customers, subscribing to the output of the solar. But I just highlight that as one example.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. It's 1 o'clock. I think you were scheduled for 1 hour, so you might work your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining for this conversation. I truly appreciate the turnout. Again, this video is going to be available on our YouTube channel, and I'll share with everybody afterwards. And I will take the opportunity to wish everybody a great weekend. Thank you.
Great. I really appreciate the time. And again, if there's something we didn't cover and someone wants to send me a note to let me know about a thought or input that you have, it's katie.dykes@ct.gov. So eager to hear from folks. Thanks again for the time.
Thank you again. Bye.
Merci Thomas. Salut.
Merci.